What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. Today I have a very exciting show, a very informative show. First and foremost, we have seen police officers use tear gas on protesters over and over and over and over again. And as a person who has been in the military, who had an extensive class. I remember because I hated that class, but I was in the military and had an extensive class on the Geneva Convention. You know, what went down at the Geneva Convention. Why we adhere to the Geneva Convention. And the most important rules that came out of the Geneva Convention. One of those rules were to not ever use chemical weapons on anybody, period, point blank. If you all recall, the use of chemical weapons is the quote-unquote red line that Obama has used to invade Syria, if you all recall, right? So the idea that we would be using chemical weapons in the United States is just absolutely and utterly ridiculous, right? The idea that we would violate the Geneva Convention, hint, hint, we always violate the Geneva Convention, but the idea that we would violate the Geneva Convention on American soil is absurd. A lot of people have been making the point lately that tear gas is in fact a chemical weapon, and that we are in fact violating the Geneva Convention. And of course, those who don't know how to use Google, DuckDuckGo, or Bing have just decided, no, that's not true, that's crazy, you're out of your mind. Somebody like myself, who doesn't believe everything he reads on the internet, decided to do some research. And I was like when I heard it, when I first saw it, I was like, oh snap, that's true. And then I had to confirm, because an article by, I guess this is something that's been being discussed a lot lately, and USA Today actually covered it. And this is what they actually did an article. What's today? Is today the 6th? No, it is the 7th, right? 6th. Oh man, so they did this today. So, is the use of tear gas prohibited by the Geneva Convention that the United States is in fact a part of? Let's check it out. Chemical Weapons Convention and the 1925 Geneva Protocol ban the use of tear gas in warfare. The 1925 Geneva Protocol categorized tear gas as a chemical warfare agent and banned its use in war shortly after World War I. The protocol was signed at a conference held in Geneva and took effect on February 8th, 1928, according to the United Nations website. However, the text of the protocol did not go into depth on what gases were banned. Bruh, tear gas, if it is gaseous and has enough chemicals to make you cry and non-functional, I think that's enough detail to qualify as tear gas. I'm just saying, but hey. It goes on to say, under the protocol, the United States reserved the right, as usual, to use riot control agents in cases of controlling rioting prisoners of war, or situations where civilian casualties can be avoided. Question: shooting? Are we shooting tear gas at rioting prisoners of war? No. Have civilian casualties been accrued? Yeah, a lot actually. Okay. Goes on to say the United States could also use it in rescue missions to recover isolated personnel and outside of combat zones to protect convoys from civil disturbances. There is no convoy, by the way. There's no military convoy I mean, there might have, I mean, convoys basically when a bunch of military vehicles get together and they go from city to city, and they may not necessarily be in a combat zone when they're going from city to city, but if there's a sudden attack, they made a distinction saying we could protect ourselves using tear gas in that scenario. Now, it goes on to say that in 1993, nations could begin signing the United Nations Chemical Weapons Convention, the CWC, that outlawed the use of riot control agents in warfare. Riot control agents under the convention are defined as any chemical not listed in the schedule where which can produce rapidly in humans sensory irritation or disabling physical effects, which disappear within a short time following the termination of exposure. That's tear gas. A database by the International Committee of the Red Cross shows the ban of riot control agents in war went into effect in 1997, but still made it legal for law enforcement to use. Somebody want to explain to me how that works out? You're telling me chemical weapons are so dangerous that we can't, or tear gas specifically, is so dangerous that we can't use it in a war zone against our quote-unquote adversaries and enemies, which of course we all know, as Muhammad Ali said, it's just other poor people of color that they're sending us over to go kill. But nonetheless, they claim that we can't use chemical weapons against our adversaries in a war zone, but then police can use chemical weapons against us, which, by the way, this isn't a war zone. I don't know if y'all knew this, but no, the United States supposedly is not a war zone. And then, of course, the Senate approved the CWC, which once again is the Chemical Weapons Convention, April 25th, 1997, 74 votes to 26. Hold up. That sounds weird. Because I know how the United States work, ladies and gentlemen. We like to ban, for example, let's just put chemical weapons to the side. Let's talk about nuclear weapons. How many countries have we threatened because they are building nuclear weapons? Actually, not even that. They're just trying to achieve like nuclear efficiency. And then we said, oh, that's too close, and you'll be able to make a nuclear weapon if you go any further, and therefore we have to sanction you to the point where all of your people begin to starve and begin to die. Remember, like that happens pretty often, right? But the problem with that is, of course, we have a bunch of nuclear weapons, and we're hypocrites. We're raging hypocrites. And we all know the real reason that we don't want countries like Iran to have nuclear weapons, because we've given them every single reason to use it. We've given Iran every reason to want to defend themselves. And it's a very powerful nation. So if they had their military and their militia in addition to nuclear weapons, then they could actually be a problem for the United States. They're already a problem for the United States. Now let's put that back to the side. Bring back in tear gas. Doesn't it seem like the only reason we ratified the CWC, the Chemical Warfare Convention, or Chemical Weapons Convention, excuse me, is so that other countries couldn't use tear gas and perhaps other agents on us, so that we could use that as another excuse to invade other nations? But we wanted to reserve the right to still deploy dangerous weapons on United States citizens. We wanted to reserve the right for the police to use weapons that we considered too horrid to use on enemies or adversaries from other nations. Does anybody find that a wee bit disturbing? And by the way, to answer the question, Does tear gas violate the CWC, which is the Chemical Weapons Convention that our Senate approved? Does it violate it technically using them in the United States? No. But does the CWC admit that they're too dangerous to use? Yeah, it did, unless you're using them on American citizens and they're owned by police. On top of that, once again, the Geneva Code also says, despite what the damn CWC says, the Geneva Code that we signed on to says that we absolutely cannot use tear gas. If you do, that is a war crime. And there is no distinction as to whether or not you're doing it on your own soil or doing it in another country, whether or not it's the police officers doing it to their own citizens or the military doing it in another country. So the answer is yes. The answer is absolutely. We are committing war crimes on our own citizens. Once again, we should not be all that surprised by this, considering Obama literally militarized the police. So I guess we shouldn't be all that surprised. But they are using a chemical weapons agent. And by the way, it's problematic while happening under Trump, but it was problematic when it happened under Obama too. Considering that Obama was the one who actually claimed that Assad used chemical weapons agents on his own people, and that turned out to be a lie. Meanwhile, we're literally filming cops as they use a weapon that is considered illegal, unlawful, a violation of international law. Who exactly is going to be held accountable here? And I found this point particularly interesting because I see so many people, mostly conservatives here, justifying the use of a chemical weapons agent on peaceful protesters because of a very small minority of looters who have, for the most part, not even been proven to be a part of the protest. They're just a small sect of people who have taken advantage of the situation. But let's be clear, I don't think that's even the reason that tear gas is being used. Tear gas is being used because most police forces are full of fascists. Most mayors and governors are supportive of authoritarianism and fascism. Because these police officers are a bunch of military rejects who think that they're soldiers. But if you notice, there's a clear pattern being shown of every time they try to go after somebody one-on-one, it's always somebody smaller than them. A lot of the time, it's a little petite girl. They never try to see somebody that's my size with the ones. So the moral of the story is they're using chemical weapons agents because they can. Now, out of curiosity, have you heard any Western organization or Western country or anybody on the Human Rights Committee threaten to sanction us? Have you heard anybody threaten to invade us? Well, I'm waiting for that call from Maduro to be like, hey, y'all, it's about that time. We got to go in there and overthrow the government. You know what Trump said about Iran? It just reminded me. You're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. To the leaders of Iran, this was said on, oh God, it was said on January 12th, 2020. To the leaders of Iran, do not kill your protesters. Thousands have already been killed or imprisoned by you. And the world is watching. More importantly, the USA is watching. Turn your internet back on and let reporters roam free. Stop the killing of your great Iranian people. How anyone can take this man seriously is beyond me. How anyone can pretend that he is somehow this altruistic pillar of just moral centeredness. Like, come on. Really? He's a liar. And he is allowing and actually supporting the use of chemical weapons on his own countrymen. And he's telling you that he and his supporters are actually the patriots. Interesting. Some pretty twisted logic, don't you think? He's a liar. He's full of it. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't even care about your business like he claims. He doesn't care. He cares no more than Obama does. These are the facts. If you like that segment of Mikasa Sukasa, don't forget to like the video and smash that subscribe button. Want access to members only live streams, behind the scenes footage, and other premium content? Well, you can endorse us on Rockfin Premium, become a patron through Patreon, or you can sign up for the MCSC Premium membership through YouTube. All the links are in the description below. But hey, more than anything else, always remember,
find your balance.
Find your balance.
Find your balance.
Find your balance. Find your balance.
Find your balance. Find your balance.
Always remember, more than anything else, find your balance.
peace.